August 24th, 1799, Webster County, Kentucky. A man lies dying in dirt the color of dried blood, shot twice, once in the leg, once in the back. The morning temperature hovers at 68 degrees, but he's sweating. 7 men stand in a circle watching. Cicadas scream from oak trees. The smell of gunpowder still hangs in humid air. Harpe, called Big Harpe, has killed at least 39 people, possibly 50. The exact number is lost to rivers where he sank bodies weighted with stones. He's confessing now, as blood pools beneath him, to 20 murders. He's lying, protecting accomplices, minimizing horror even as he dies. One of the 7 men steps forward. Moses Stiegel. 4 days ago, these brothers killed his wife, slit his 4-month-old son's throat because the infant cried, burned his house to the ground while the bodies smoldered inside. Stiegel holds a butcher knife. He will execute Big Harpe in the same brutal manner the killer showed his victims, while the man is still conscious, while he watches justice delivered through fading vision. This isn't robbery. The Harpes never stole money, left it on corpses, abandoned in mud. This isn't revenge killing. Most victims were strangers encountered on forest trails. This isn't war, though both brothers learned to kill in one. This is America's first documented serial murder spree. 15 years of killing purely for psychological gratification, opening bodies and filling them with stones, murdering infants, including their own children, for crying, perfecting methods of death the way craftsmen perfect furniture joinery. They killed because they enjoyed it, because frontier America, young and lawless, gave them 15 years to do it without consequence. The question isn't whether they were monsters. They were. The question is, what makes a monster? War, trauma, displacement, absence of law, or something born into bone and brain, waiting for permission? And the harder question, when you catch a monster bleeding in Kentucky dirt, when your infant son's throat was slit 4 days ago, when law is 40 miles away and moving slowly, what's justice? What's revenge? Where's the line? Moses Stiegel is about to erase that line completely. But this story doesn't start in Kentucky. It starts 30 years earlier, across an ocean, in Scotland, where 2 families make a choice that will echo through American history in blood. 1759, the Scottish Highlands. 2 brothers, John Harpe and William Harpe, stand on a dock in Glasgow, watching cargo load onto a merchant ship bound for the American colonies. They're leaving everything. Land their families worked for generations. Presbyterian church where their children were baptized. Graveyards holding their parents. They're fleeing something. The historical record doesn't say what. Highland clearances. Perhaps landlords forcing tenant farmers off land to make room for more profitable sheep. Or religious persecution, or debts, or simply the grinding poverty that pushed thousands of Scots across the Atlantic in those years. Whatever they're running from, they're running towards something worse. 1760, North Carolina. The coastline appears through morning fog like a promise. Pine forests stretching inland as far as sight carries. Red clay soil. Rivers running clean and cold. Land available for the taking if you're willing to push far enough into wilderness where Cherokee still hunt and British law barely reaches. The Harpe families settle in Orange County, backcountry, frontier, the kind of place where survival skills matter more than education, where a good rifle counts for more than good manners, where violence isn't aberration, it's Tuesday. They build cabins from pine logs, clear land, plant corn and tobacco, attend Presbyterian church on Sundays in a rough-hewn building that smells of fresh wood and human sweat. The minister preaches Calvinist doctrine, predestination, total depravity, unconditional election, hell described with mathematical precision, salvation offered to the chosen few. 2 boys grow up in this world. Cousins, born 2 years apart. Harpe, who'll later be called Big Harpe, born before 1768, exact date lost, and Wiley Harpe, Little Harpe, born before 1770. They'll later call themselves brothers. Everyone will believe them. but genealogical records suggest they're cousins, sons of the two brothers John and William. It doesn't matter. They're raised together, sleep in the same loft, hunt the same forests, learn to shoot, track, kill, and gut deer before they're 10 years old. Normal frontier childhood by the standards of 1765 North Carolina. Boys learn to survive, to be hard, to understand that life is brutal and short, and you take what you can while you can take it. Except for one detail that won't seem important for another decade. Their families are loyalists, supporters of the British Crown, believers in monarchy, tradition, the God-given right of kings to rule. In Scotland, this was normal, expected, safe. In America, in this new, restless, angry America, it's choosing the losing side of history. 1775. The boys are children now. Micajah perhaps 6 to 8 years old. Exact birth date unknown. Wiley younger by approximately 2 years. They hear news from the north. Massachusetts, Lexington and Concord. Colonists firing on British soldiers. Revolution beginning. Their families choose Britain, choose the crown, choose everything that frontier America is fighting to escape. What does it do to children? That choice. Growing up knowing you're enemies of the nation being born around you. Knowing that everyone you pass on forest trails, everyone you see at church, everyone in your small frontier community is slowly, inexorably becoming your enemy. Does it harden you? Make you see other humans as threats before you see them as people? Train you to view violence as survival? Or were Micajah and Wiley already broken? Already wired wrong? Just waiting for a war to give them permission? The answer matters, because the Revolutionary War is coming to North Carolina, and it will teach 2 teenage boys that killing has no consequences. That brutality earns respect, that the most violent fighters survive while the gentle ones die in mud. 1775 to 1783. 8 years that will forge monsters. October 7th, 1780. Kings Mountain, on the border between North and South Carolina. Temperature in the low 50s. Morning fog so dense it turns the forest into grey ghosts. You can hear men breathing 20 yards away. Can't see them. 15-year-old Frank Wood fighting for the Patriots, for America, for freedom from British rule, aims his rifle at a shadow moving through mist. Tory fighter, British loyalist, enemy. He fires, misses. The shadow disappears into battle smoke and fog and the chaos of 3 hours of mountain warfare where over 900 men kill each other in dense forest because they believe different things about who should rule them. 20 years later, Frank Wood will learn the identity of that shadow. The man he missed. Micajah Harpe. The shot that failed will haunt his family forever. Because Micajah survives Kings Mountain. So does his cousin Wiley. They're fighting for the losing side, British and Tories, but they survive the battle that breaks British power in the southern colonies. Survive the brutal hand-to-hand combat after the shooting stops. When patriots and loyalists club each other with rifle butts because they're out of ammunition and too angry to stop. And they learn something that day. Something fundamental about human nature and frontier justice. They learn that in war, you can kill and call it duty. The historical record here gets murky. We have one primary source, Frank Wood's testimony, recorded in an interview in the early 1800s. Frank Wood, who was there, who fought at Kings Mountain, whose sister will later be kidnapped by these same men. Frank Wood says the Harpes served under Lieutenant Colonel Banastre Tarleton, the British Legion, the most brutal, most feared cavalry unit in the British Army. Tarleton's reputation was built on terror. His men didn't just fight patriots, they destroyed them, burned farms, slaughtered livestock, targeted women and children to break the will to resist. Tarleton's quarter became a phrase meaning no mercy given, no prisoners taken, no surrender accepted. If you begged for your life, they killed you anyway. The Harpes fit perfectly. November 20th, 1780. Battle of Blackstocks. Tarleton's cavalry charges a patriot position. The fighting lasts less than an hour, But the killing continues afterward, going through the wounded, finishing them. January 17th, 1781. Battle of Cowpens. Tarleton's legion gets destroyed by Patriot forces under Daniel Morgan. Routed, scattered. The British survivors flee south into Georgia and the Carolinas. The Harpes are somewhere in that chaos. Young teenagers, 12, perhaps 13 or 14 years old, brutalized by war, trained in violence, old enough to kill, young enough to be permanently shaped by it. And according to Frank Wood's testimony, they're doing more than fighting. They're part of roving bands of Tory fighters who target Patriot families. Burning homes is strategic, destroy the enemy's resources. But they go further. Sexual violence against women and girls. Just cruelty. Just power. Just young men learning they can do anything to anyone if they have guns, and the other side doesn't. Frank Wood says his father, Captain James Wood, stopped one of those attacks. The Harpes came to the Wood farm. Captain Wood wasn't there. His daughter Susan Wood, teenager, perhaps 14 or 15 was. Wiley Harpe attempted to assault her sexually. Captain Wood arrived, shot Wiley, wounded him in the chest or shoulder. Accounts vary. The girl escaped. Wiley survived and remembered. Revenge will come 13 years later, when the Harpes kidnap Susan Wood and force her into captivity. But first, the war has to end. 1781, October 19th, Yorktown. British General Cornwallis surrenders. The war is functionally over. Peace negotiations will drag on for 2 more years, but the fighting stops. Consequences begin. Tory families face reckoning. Property confiscated by the new American government. Names listed in newspapers as traitors. Some executed, some imprisoned. Most stripped of everything they owned and driven west, away from settlements, into wilderness where no law protects them and no neighbors will help them. The Harpes don't wait for consequences. They flee, west across the Appalachian Mountains, into Cherokee territory, into a place where British law never reached and American law doesn't reach yet. A place where 2 young men brutalized by war, trained in terror, experienced in rape and murder, can disappear completely. For 13 years. 13 years of living among renegade Cherokee warriors who won't accept American peace. 13 years of raids and violence and learning that killing really does have no consequences if you're far enough from civilization. 13 years of becoming something worse than soldiers. 1782. Nickajack Village, Tennessee River Valley. Limestone bluffs rising above water the color of slate. Dense forest pressing close. Temperature in the 60s. Humid. The air thick enough to feel against skin. The Harpes arrive here after fleeing North Carolina. They're refugees. Traitors to the new American nation. Wanted men if they return east. Nickajack is Chickamauga Cherokee territory. Renegade band. Warriors who refused peace when other Cherokees signed treaties with America. Who continue raiding frontier settlements while the Cherokee nation tries to coexist with American expansion. Perfect refuge for 2 men running from consequences. The village accepts them. Probably because they're useful. They know how to fight, how to shoot, how to move through forest without sound. Skills learned in Tarleton's Legion translate perfectly to Cherokee raid tactics. The Harpes live here 13 years, longer than they lived anywhere else, long enough that this becomes home. Long enough that whatever humanity they had when they arrived gets stripped away completely. 13 years of low-level warfare, raiding American settlements across the border, stealing horses, burning cabins, killing settlers, not for Cherokee political goals or territorial defense, just for the pleasure of violence. For the rush of terror in someone else's eyes when they realize they're going to die. No law touches them here. No consequences reach them. Cherokee Nation leadership trying to maintain peace with America won't control the Chickamauga renegades. American military can't reach this deep into Cherokee territory without starting a full-scale war. The Harpes exist in a perfect vacuum of accountability, and they kidnap women, 1784 or 85. Exact date unknown. Susan Wood. Captain James Wood's daughter. The girl Wiley tried to rape during the Revolutionary War. The girl whose father shot him. The Harpes find her. How? The historical record doesn't specify. Maybe they tracked the Wood family deliberately. Revenge planned and executed with military precision. Or maybe they stumbled across her and recognized her and saw opportunity. Either way, they take her. She's 15 or 16 years old, becomes Big Harpe's wife, not through marriage, not through choice, through captivity and rape and the understanding that resistance means death. They kidnap Maria Davidson too. Different family, different circumstances, same result. She becomes Big Harpe's second wife. 2 women, 1 man. All the violence implied by that arrangement. Susan Wood and Maria Davidson spend years in Nickajack, pregnant repeatedly, giving birth in a Cherokee village with no doctor, no help beyond Cherokee women who probably pity them but can't save them. And every time they give birth, the Harpes kill the infant. Not for crying, not because the babies might attract attention during raids, not for any tactical reason, just because they can. Susan Wood watches her first baby die, then her second, each one murdered within hours or days of birth. The historical accounts don't specify methods, perhaps because witnesses couldn't bear to describe what they saw. The specifics are almost beside the point. The point is that 2 women, held captive for years, are forced to bear children and then watch those children murdered by the men who fathered them. What breaks in a person, enduring that Susan Wood never speaks publicly about these years, after she's freed, after the Harpes are dead, after she remarries and lives a normal life in Tennessee, she never tells her story. Or if she does, it doesn't survive in the historical record. Maybe some trauma is too deep for words. Maybe survival requires silence. Maybe she simply chose to bury those years and move forward because the alternative was madness. Maria Davidson, who sometimes called herself Betsy Roberts, also stays silent. Also lives a normal life afterward. Also buries her past. The women survive. They endure. They learn that survival means compliance, silence, making yourself small enough that maybe the violence passes over you. But what breaks in the men doing this? Or were they already broken? Was war just permission? Was Nickajack just freedom from the last constraints? The Harpes live in Nickajack 13 years, long enough to become legendary, even among Cherokee warriors known for brutality, long enough that when American militia finally plans to destroy Nickajack in 1794, the Harpes somehow learn about it in advance and flee. September 13, 1794. American militia raids Nickajack, destroys the village, kills or scatters the Chickamauga Cherokee who won't accept peace. But the Harpes are gone, taking Susan Wood and Maria Davidson with them, heading east again, back toward Tennessee settlements, back toward what passes for civilization in 1794 America. They settle near Knoxville, try to live normally, build a cabin on Beaver Creek, plant crops, pretend to be frontier farmers like any other frontier farmers. It lasts 3 years. June 1st, 1797, Knoxville, Tennessee, a Sunday, temperature in the mid-70s, long afternoon light streaming through windows of a Presbyterian church, the smell of wood and candle wax and human bodies packed into a small space. Sarah Rice stands before her father and marries Wiley Harpe. She's 17 years old, daughter of a Presbyterian minister, raised in church, in doctrine, in the strict Calvinist belief that some are chosen for salvation and some are not, that depravity is total and grace is selective, and you can't earn heaven, you're either elect or you're damned. She marries Wiley Harpe, legal ceremony, recorded in the Knox County Marriage Book, page 43. Official, binding, recognized by law and church and community. Does she know what he is? The question haunts everyone who studies this story. Because Sarah Rice had choices. She could have said no, could have told her father about rumors, could have run. She said yes. And that yes suggests either profound ignorance or calculated survival, or something more complex. Maybe love. Maybe manipulation. Maybe the simple fact that frontier women in 1797 had limited options, and marriage to a charming man starting fresh in a new town seemed better than remaining unmarried in her father's house. We'll never know. Sarah Rice Harpe never spoke publicly about that day, never explained her choice, never testified after the murders started, never justified or condemned or even acknowledged. She stayed silent, and that silence makes her either victim or accomplice, or both. Wiley is 27 years old when they marry. Mikaja is perhaps 29. Both trying to live normally, both apparently succeeding. They work their farm on Beaver Creek, attend church maybe, buy supplies in Knoxville, interact with neighbors like normal frontier settlers. Susan Wood and Maria Davidson are there too. Big Harpe's wives, living in the same cabin, sharing the same space. All 5 of them, 3 women, 2 men. An arrangement that probably raises eyebrows but doesn't attract official attention because frontier Tennessee in 1797 has flexible definitions of marriage and family. For months, it works. Then neighbors notice livestock going missing. Pigs, horses. Accusations start. Quiet at first, then louder. The Harpes are thieves. The Harpes can't be trusted. The Harpes should leave. Late 1797. The community drives them out. Not through law, no trial, no sheriff, no formal charges. Just social pressure and implied threats, and the clear message that they're not welcome anymore. The Harpes leave Knoxville. Head northeast toward Kentucky, toward the Wilderness Trail, toward the main migration route west, where thousands of settlers travel annually, seeking land and futures and the promise of frontier America, seeking victims. December 1797. The temperature drops. Winter settles over the Appalachian Mountains. The Harpes cross from Tennessee into Kentucky, and the killing starts, not gradually, not building up to violence, just immediately, brutally, without hesitation or remorse, as if 3 years of trying to be normal was exhausting, as if pretending to be human required more energy than they possessed, as if they were always going to kill, and the only question was when they'd stop pretending otherwise. 15 years of murder spree begins. At least 39 victims, possibly 50. Bodies gutted and filled with stones and sunk in rivers. Infants killed for crying. Travelers murdered for existing in their path. All of it traceable back to choices made decades earlier. Scottish families fleeing to America. Teenage boys fighting for the British. 13 years in Cherokee territory, learning that violence has no consequences. Or maybe traceable back further, to something born into them, something waiting. The making of monsters is never simple, never one thing, always a combination of circumstance and choice, and maybe something else, something in the architecture of the brain that makes empathy impossible and violence pleasurable. The Harpes are about to demonstrate that combination for 15 years, and America young, violent, lawless, is going to let them. December 1798. The Wilderness Trail through Kentucky. Temperature in the mid-30s, dropping to the 20s at night. Early darkness sunset by 5 p.m. Full dark by 5:30. The kind of cold that makes your hands ache when you try to load a rifle. 2 men from Maryland travel this road. Brothers. Maybe. Or business partners. The historical record doesn't preserve their names or relationship. Just the fact that they existed and then didn't. They're seeking land, new lives. The promise that draws thousands of settlers west every year through the Cumberland Gap, and along this trail the promise that in Kentucky, in frontier America, you can reinvent yourself, leave behind whatever you were and become whatever you want. The Harpes are traveling the same trail. They meet at a crossroads or a creek, or simply on the road itself. 2 friendly travelers. Charming, even, offering to journey together because safety in numbers, because wolves and bears and Cherokee raiding parties make solo travel dangerous, because frontier culture teaches that you help other travelers, because someday you'll need help yourself. The Maryland men say yes. 3 days later, cattle herders find the bodies in a creek bed, water running over them, cold and clear. The bodies are weighted down with stones, not dropped in the water, deliberately positioned, gutted from breastbone to pelvis, chest cavities opened and filled with river stones, each one selected and placed with care. The men's money is still in their pockets, their possessions, rifles, powder horns, bedrolls, everything they owned scattered on the creek bank, untouched. Not robbery, not a fight over resources, not self-defense or accident or any rational motive, just murder, elaborate, ritualized, purposeless murder. This becomes the Harpe signature. Open the body, fill it with stones, sink it in water. A method that serves no practical purpose. The bodies are always found anyway. The stones don't hide the crime. The ritual doesn't erase evidence, but it satisfies something. Some need to make death more than death, to transform killing into craft, to perfect a method the way a carpenter perfects dovetail joints. The Harpes kill again. A man on the Wilderness Trail. Then another in Knox County, Tennessee. Then John Langford, traveling from Virginia to Kentucky. Langford's body is found by an innkeeper who'd spoken with him the day before. The innkeeper remembers 2 other men joining Langford's journey, describes them to authorities. The descriptions match. December 25th, 1798. Christmas Day. A posse catches the Harpes near Crab Orchard, Kentucky. All 3 women are with them. Sarah Rice, Susan Wood, Maria Davidson. All 3 are pregnant. All 3 are arrested along with the men. They're taken to Stamford Jail, then transferred to Danville to await trial. Danville Jail in 1798 is a log structure with a dirt floor and iron bars across the windows. No heat, no sanitation beyond a bucket in the corner. The women are kept in one cell, the men in another. January through March 1799. They wait. The women give birth in jail. 3 infants born in winter cold with no doctor, no midwife beyond the jailer's wife who probably has no medical training. Remarkably, all 3 babies survive. March 16th, 1799. The Harpes escape. Method unknown. The jail records don't specify how they got out. Broke the bars. Maybe. Bribed the jailer. Picked the lock. Or simply walked out during a moment of inattention. The women and infants are left behind. Too slow to run. Too vulnerable to flee with newborns through Kentucky wilderness in March cold. The Harpes' first act of freedom revenge. They find the young son of the man who helped authorities identify them. The boy is maybe 10 or 12 years old. His father cooperated with law enforcement, described the Harpes, helped the posse track them. The boy is found 3 days later, mutilated. Methods unspecified in the sources, perhaps because the witnesses couldn't bear to describe what they saw. A message written in a child's body. This is what happens when you cooperate. This is the cost of helping authorities. This is what justice earns you in a place where law is 40 miles away and killers are here, now, willing to murder children to make a point. The killing accelerates. They murder 2 men named Edmonton and Stump fleeing north. 3 men camping near the Saline River in southern Illinois. A farmer. A boy. Names lost or never recorded. Bodies found days or weeks later in various states of decay and dismemberment. By spring 1799, the death toll is rising faster than authorities can track. No central record keeping. No communication between counties. Just scattered reports: body found here, travelers missing there, family murdered somewhere else that don't coalesce into a pattern until the pattern is already written in blood. April 22nd, 1799, Frankfort, Kentucky. Governor James Garrard sits at a desk in the Capitol building and writes a proclamation that will become one of the most famous wanted posters in American history. $300 reward for each Harpe, dead or alive, in $1799. That's a fortune. Equivalent to approximately $5,671 in 2024 currency. Enough to buy a small farm. enough to change your life. But the reward isn't what makes the proclamation remarkable. It's the description, clinical, precise, the kind of detail that reveals a government taking this seriously, documenting everything, trying to provide enough information that bounty hunters will know exactly who they're looking for. Micajah Harpe, alias Roberts, is about 6 feet high of robust make and is about 30 or 32 years of age. He has an ill-looking, downcast countenance, and his hair is black and short, but comes very much down his forehead. He is built very straight and is full-fleshed in the face. When he went away, he had on a striped nankeen coat, dark blue woolen stockings, leggings of drab cloth and trousers of the same as the coat. 6 feet tall. In 1799, when the average American man stands maybe 5'6", that's notable. Robust build, 30 to 32 years old, black hair that grows low on his forehead, full-fleshed face, and that phrase, ill-looking, downcast countenance. Not angry, not wild-eyed or mad-looking, downcast, like a man carrying weight, like someone who knows what he is and can't escape that knowledge even when he wants to. Wiley Harpe, alias Roberts, is very meagre in his face, has short black hair but not quite so curly as his brothers. He looks older, though really younger, and has likewise a downcast countenance. Thin-faced where his cousin is robust, older-looking despite being younger, same downcast expression. Same alias Roberts suggesting they're traveling as brothers under a false name. The descriptions go out across Kentucky, printed on broadsides, read in taverns, discussed in churches. Everyone from Louisville to the Cumberland Gap knows the Harpes' faces now, knows the reward, knows that $300 awaits anyone who brings them in. But government is 40 miles away. The nearest sheriff covers an entire county, hundreds of square miles of forest and creek and scattered settlements. He can't patrol everywhere, can't protect everyone, can't respond to every report of suspicious travelers. So the posses that form aren't official, aren't law enforcement. They're farmers and merchants and fathers who've lost children, men who know that if they don't hunt the Harpes themselves, nobody will. The line between justice and revenge disappears in Kentucky wilderness. When your neighbor's family is murdered, when the killers are running free, when law enforcement is a concept more than a reality, you become the law, you become justice, you become the execution, and maybe you become something else too, something darker, something that looks a lot like what you're hunting. Spring 1799. The Harpes flee north toward Illinois. 3 women and 3 infants with them, the babies born in Danville jail, traveling through Kentucky forest where every settlement knows their faces now, where every tavern has the wanted poster tacked to the wall. They reach the Ohio River in southern Illinois. Temperature in the 60s, warming towards summer. The river runs wide and brown, carrying flatboats loaded with settlers' possessions downstream toward new lives in the Western Territories. And on the Illinois bank, 55 feet wide and 20 feet high, cut into limestone bluffs overlooking the water cave in rock. Perfect natural fortress. You can see flatboats coming from miles away, can shelter dozens of men inside, can escape into forest if authorities approach by land, or downstream if they approach by water. Samuel Mason runs this cave, the most feared river pirate on the Ohio River. His gang robs flatboats, boards them while they're moving slowly through shallow water, kills anyone who resists, takes money and supplies and anything valuable, then disappears back into the cave before help can arrive. They're professional criminals, ruthless, efficient, motivated by profit. They kill when necessary and avoid killing when possible, because corpses attract attention, and attention attracts military intervention. The Harpes arrive with their women and children and ask for refuge. Mason accepts them, probably because they're useful, experienced fighters, good shots, willing to kill without hesitation, for weeks, maybe months. The Harpes work with Mason's gang, rob flatboats, take money, live the outlaw life in relative stability. Then something happens. Accounts vary on the specific incident, but all sources agree on the result. Samuel Mason, a man who's killed dozens of people, tells the Harpes to leave. One version says the Harpes captured a flatboat traveller, stripped him naked, tied him to a horse, and drove the horse off the cliff above the cave. The horse and rider fell 50 feet, narrowly missing pirates working below. Deliberate malice, casual cruelty. The kind of thing you do when killing isn't enough, you need spectacle. Another version says they used their signature method, gutting a victim and filling the body with stones, and the other pirates watched this ritual murder and understood that the Harpes weren't killing for profit, weren't killing for territory or self-defense or any reason that makes sense in the criminal economy. They were killing for pleasure, for the satisfaction of watching someone die slowly, for the artistic fulfillment of perfecting a method. What's certain is that Samuel Mason, whose gang regularly murders settlers for pocket change, looks at the Harpes and sees something categorically different. Sees men who've crossed a line that even criminals recognize, who've moved from violence as means to violence as end, and he tells them to leave. When criminals fear you, when outlaws who rob and kill for a living decide you're too dangerous to associate with, when river pirates who've seen every kind of frontier brutality tell you to get out, you've become something beyond criminal, beyond outlaw, beyond the categories that frontier America uses to understand violence. The Harpes take their women and children and leave Cave in Rock. Head south and east, back toward Kentucky, back toward Tennessee, back toward the settlements where everyone knows their faces and the $300 bounty waits. They kill along the way. 3 men here, 2 men there, a farmer, a boy. The numbers climb, the bodies accumulate. August 1799. They've been killing for 9 months since escaping Danville jail. At least 15 murders in those 9 months. Probably more. Bodies are still being discovered, weeks-old corpses in creek beds, in forest clearings, in places where no one goes except hunters, and they've already been scattered by animals. The exact count is impossible, but the pattern is clear. The Harpes kill everyone they encounter, every traveller, every person who offers them shelter, every witness, everyone, and then they kill their own. August 1799, northeast of Russellville, Kentucky, temperature pushing 90 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity thick enough to taste, cicadas screaming from every tree, that high-pitched pulse that defines southern summer. The Harpes are traveling with 3 women and 3 infants. The babies born in Danville jail months earlier, 5, 6, perhaps 7 months old, depending on when in that cold winter they'd arrived. Traveling in August heat is hard enough for adults, carrying infants makes it worse. Babies need frequent feeding, frequent changing, frequent stops. They cry when hot, when hungry, when uncomfortable. Big Harpe's daughter won't stop crying. The women try everything: nursing, rocking, walking, singing. Whatever frontier mothers do in 1799 to soothe crying infants. Nothing works. Heat and hunger, and the general misery of being 5 months old and traveling through Kentucky wilderness in August. The baby cries. Micajah Harpe picks up his daughter, Sarah Rice or Susan Wood or Maria Davidson, one of the 3 women. The sources don't specify which one is the mother watches him. Maybe understands what's about to happen. Maybe doesn't until it's too late. Big Harpe walks to an oak tree, holds his daughter by the ankles. One impact against the bark. Instant death. Silence. The women don't react. Can't react. What do you do when a man murders his own infant daughter in front of you? Scream, run, attack him. Any of those responses means your death. So you stand there. You watch. You go silent inside in ways that maybe never heal. The Harpes continue traveling. Leave the body where it fell. Don't bury her. Don't mark the spot. Just walk away from a dead 5-month-old as if she never existed. Weeks later, August 24th, dying in Kentucky dirt with a bullet in his back, Micajah Harpe will confess to this murder. Will call it the only crime for which he feels genuine remorse. Not the 2 men from Maryland. Not John Langford. Not the 10-year-old boy he mutilated to send a message. Not Major William Love or Mrs. Stiegel or her 4-month-old son murders he'll commit in 3 more days. Just his own daughter. The crime that apparently revealed him to himself. The moment where even he couldn't justify what he'd done. Is that remorse meaningful? Does feeling guilt for one murder absolve 40 others? Does selective conscience prove humanity? Or prove its opposite, that he knew right from wrong all along and chose wrong anyway? The question matters because it determines whether the Harpes are human or something else, whether they're broken by circumstance or born broken, whether war and displacement and frontier lawlessness created monsters or just gave permission to monsters who were always waiting. Big Harpe's remorse for killing his daughter suggests he had a conscience, had empathy, had the capacity to recognize that some acts are unforgivable. But he killed 39 other people without remorse, killed strangers and friends and hosts who offered him shelter, killed methodically, ritually, with increasing elaboration and care. Which version is true? The man who feels guilt for his daughter, or the man who guts travelers for pleasure? Both. Always both. The capacity for love and the capacity for horror coexisting in the same brain, the same hands, the same man who swings an infant against a tree and then, dying, says he's sorry. Understanding that duality doesn't excuse anything, doesn't make the murders less monstrous, doesn't resurrect the dead, but it makes the question harder, makes the easy answer that they were pure evil, born without conscience impossible, because pure evil doesn't feel remorse, doesn't recognize its own actions as wrong, doesn't lie dying and confess to the one crime that haunts it. Big Harpe is 3 days away from his own death, 3 days from Moses Steggall's knife, 3 days from becoming the severed head mounted on a pole as warning to other travelers. But first, he has one more family to destroy. August 20th, 1799. 6:30 in the evening. Moses Steggall's cabin, Webster County, Kentucky, 5 miles east of what will later become the town of Dixon. The sun sets behind oak and hickory forest, casting long shadows across cleared land. Temperature still 83 degrees despite the hour. Humidity like a wet cloth pressed against your face. Inside the cabin, Mrs. Moses Steggall prepares supper. Her first name is lost to history. The sources call her only Mrs. Steggall, or wife of Moses. Identity erased by the centuries, and the documentation that reduces women to their relationships with men. She might have been named Mary. One source suggests it, but the verification doesn't exist, so she remains nameless. Another victim whose identity dissolved into the violence that killed her. Her 4-month-old son sleeps in a cradle near the hearth. The sources suggest he might have been named James. Same uncertainty, same erasure. Major William Love is already there. He arrived that afternoon, a surveyor with business involving Moses Steggall, who's away and won't return until tomorrow. Mrs. Steggall, following frontier hospitality custom that dictates you always offer shelter to travelers, invited him to stay the night. He climbed the ladder to the loft and arranged his bedroll on the single bed there. The cabin is typical frontier construction. Main room with a hearth, small bedroom, loft accessible by outside ladder, used for storage and extra sleeping space, dirt or rough wood floor, log walls chinked with mud, 1 or 2 windows with wooden shutters instead of glass. 7:45 p.m. 2 more travelers arrive at the door. The Harpe brothers, 3 women and 2 small children with them. The 3rd infant daughter is dead 3 days now, left by an oak tree northeast of Russellville. Mrs. Steggall doesn't know who they are. The wanted posters exist, but this is Webster County, remote even by Kentucky standards. News travels slowly. The $300 reward hasn't reached here yet. Or if it has, Mrs. Steggall hasn't seen the descriptions, doesn't know that she's looking at America's first serial killers. She sees travelers, dirty, road-weary, clearly in need of food and shelter. So she does what frontier culture demands, offers them supper, offers them a place to sleep. The Harpes and Major Love climb the ladder to the loft. 3 men sharing 1 bed. crowded but normal for frontier hospitality. You make do. You don't complain. 11 p.m. Major William Love snores. Loud, rhythmic. The sound of a man sleeping deeply after a long day's travel. In civilized places, in towns with law and neighbors close enough to hear screams. Snoring is comedy, annoyance, harmless frustration. In the darkness of Moses Stiegel's loft, it's a death sentence. Big Harpe picks up a tomahawk, raises it, brings it down once into Major Love's skull. The snoring stops. The women downstairs. Mrs. Stiegel sleeping in the bedroom. Sarah Rice and Susan Wood and Maria Davidson, wherever they've been given space, hear nothing. Or if they hear something, they think it's men moving around in the loft, adjusting positions, normal nighttime sounds. August 21st, 1799, 4:30 a.m. Dawn is still an hour away. The temperature has dropped to 72 degrees, the coolest it will be all day. The baby wakes, cries, hunger or discomfort, or the mysterious distress that makes infants cry at 4:30 in the morning for no reason you can identify. Mrs. Stiegel rises from bed, exhausted, probably. 4-month-olds don't sleep through the night reliably. She walks to the cradle. Big Harpe is already there, butcher knife in his hand. One motion with the butcher knife. The baby stops crying. Mrs. Stiegel screams. That scream is the last sound she makes. Big Harpe stabs her with the same knife he used on her son. Multiple wounds, the sources suggest, though the exact details are lost. She dies there, in her own home, next to her murdered baby, killed for the crime of offering shelter to strangers. 5 a.m. The Harpes set fire to the cabin. They don't know if Moses Stiegel will return today or tomorrow or next week. Don't care. Fire destroys evidence, or they think it does. Though frontier people are good at reading burns and determining what was inside when the flames started. They walk away into pre-dawn darkness, leaving 3 bodies burning, leaving Sarah Rice and Susan Wood and Maria Davidson to process what they've just witnessed, to understand that the men they travel with will kill anyone, anywhere, for any reason or no reason, to understand that survival means silence, means compliance, means making yourself small enough that maybe the violence passes over you. 8 a.m. Full light now, temperature rising toward another 90-degree day. A labourer named Williams works in a field with 2 women, breaking flax separating the fibres from the woody stem. Hard physical labour that takes hours. Williams sees smoke, not cooking smoke, which is thin and disperses quickly. Structural fire smoke, thick and black and rising in a column. He runs to investigate. The cabin is ash and embers. The smell of charred wood and something worse underneath, burned flesh, burned hair. The specific horror of human bodies consumed by fire. The bodies inside are barely recognizable. Heat intense enough to crack bones. But 3 bodies. Definitely 3. 9:30 a.m. Moses Stiegel rides up. He's been away overnight, away on business or visiting a neighbor or hunting. Whatever took him from home is trivial now, meaningless. He sees Williams, sees the burned cabin, sees the cluster of people gathering, neighbors attracted by smoke, by news spreading through the scattered settlement. His first words, according to the sources, "Where's my wife? Where's my boy?" Silence. Then someone tells him, or he figures it out from the silence, from the burned cabin, from the 3 bodies. Then rage. The kind of rage that doesn't dissipate, that crystallizes into purpose, into hunting, into the absolute certainty that he will find who did this and make them pay. 4 days later, he will. 4 days of tracking through Kentucky wilderness with a posse of 7 men. 4 days of following trails and asking questions and getting closer. And when he finds Big Harpe bleeding in the dirt, he will slowly, methodically, while the man watches, cut off his head. Mrs. Stiegel did what frontier culture demanded. Fed strangers, offered shelter, trusted in the basic human decency that makes civilization possible. That trust killed her family. Does that make her naive or good? Or both naive because she was good? Good because she believed the best of people. Dead because that belief was wrong. Frontier hospitality is built on the assumption that travelers help travelers, that you offer shelter because someday you'll need shelter. That basic human kindness creates reciprocal obligation. The Harps break that assumption, prove that kindness can be weakness, that trust can kill, that the social bonds holding civilization together are voluntary, and some people simply refuse to honor them. And when those people exist, when they move through your world killing everyone who helps them, what do? Wait for law enforcement that's 40 miles away, or become the justice yourself. August 21st, 1799, 10 a.m. Moses Stegall stands in the ashes of his home, temperature climbing toward 85 degrees, the smell of burned wood and burned flesh thick in humid air. His wife and 4-month-old son reduced to charred remains barely recognizable as human. He doesn't grieve. Not yet. Not in the way that involves tears or collapse or the visible breaking that people expect from trauma. He goes silent, cold, focused with the kind of clarity that comes when rage replaces every other emotion. Squire Silas McBee arrives within the hour. County magistrate, closest thing to law enforcement in this part of Kentucky. He organizes a posse. 7 men total. Moses Stegall, John Liper, a merchant from a nearby settlement, and 5 others whose names the historical record doesn't preserve. They provision for 3 days. Rifles, powder, food, water, no badges, no warrants, no legal authority beyond the $300 bounty Governor Garrard issued 4 months ago, and the understanding that when law is 40 miles away and moving slowly, you become the law yourself. 11 a.m. They find the trail. The Harps aren't skilled at hiding their movements. 6 people, 2 men, 3 women, 2 small children leave obvious tracks. Broken branches, footprints in soft earth, ashes from campfires. They're not running scared. They're traveling like people who've never faced consequences, who've killed for 15 years without anyone stopping them, who genuinely don't believe they'll be caught. The posse follows, through forest so dense the afternoon light barely penetrates, along creek beds where water runs cold and clear over limestone, past scattered cabins where the posse stops to ask if anyone's seen 6 travelers, and settlers describe them, and the trail gets fresher. August 21st, sunset. The posse camps for the night, temperature dropping to 70 degrees. They don't light a fire, smoke would announce their position. They eat cold food and check their weapons, and Moses Stegall sits apart from the others, staring into darkness. What does a man think about hunting the people who murdered his family? Does he imagine the confrontation plan, what he'll say, rehearse the killing in his mind until it becomes inevitable? Or does he go blank, shut down everything except the mechanical process of tracking, moving, getting closer? The sources don't record Moses Steggall's thoughts, only his actions. And his actions, 3 days from now, will answer every question about what he's feeling. August 22nd. Dawn. The posse moves at first light. Temperature 65 degrees, rising. The trail is warmer now. Campfire ashes still retain heat when they find them. The Harps are maybe 6 hours ahead, maybe less. Noon. A farmer reports seeing the group that morning, heading northwest. The farmer didn't know they were wanted, didn't recognize them from the description, just saw travelers and thought nothing of it. The posse moves faster, pushing through afternoon heat, sweat soaking through shirts, muscles aching. But the trail is fresh now, hours old instead of days. August 22nd, evening. They catch sight of smoke from a campfire, quarter-mile ahead, maybe less. The posse approaches carefully, quietly, weapons ready. It's not the Harps. Different travelers. Innocent people who nearly get shot because the posse is wound tight with anticipation and exhaustion and the knowledge that they're close. August 23rd, pre-dawn. The posse moves in darkness. gambling that the Harps won't travel at night with small children, that they're camped somewhere ahead, that if the posse moves fast enough they can close the distance before sunrise. 6 a.m. Full light. They're in dense canebrake now. Tall grass and reeds thick enough to hide a standing man. Difficult terrain. You can't see more than 20 feet in any direction. And then they spot them. August 24th, 1799. 6:10 a.m. Temperature 68 degrees. Morning fog still hanging in low areas. The Harps are in a clearing with a settler named George Smith. Smith is on his knees, hands bound behind his back. Big Harpe holds a knife. They're about to kill him. Just another murder. Number 40. 45. The exact count is lost, but the pattern is clear. The Harps kill everyone they encounter. Every witness. Every person unlucky enough to cross their path. The posse is 50 yards away, hidden by canebrake and morning fog. John Liper raises his rifle, aims at the larger figure Makaja. Big Harpe, the one holding the knife. This is it. No arrest, no trial, no judge or jury or legal process. Just frontier justice in Kentucky wilderness, delivered by 7 men who've tracked murderers for 3 days and won't let them escape again. Liper fires. The bullet catches Big Harpe in the back, entry wound between shoulder blades, travelling down through his torso, lodging somewhere near his spine. He staggers, drops the knife, tries to run. The posse breaks cover, 7 men charging through canebrake toward 2. Little Harpe runs in the opposite direction east, while Big Harpe goes west, disappearing into fog and dense vegetation before anyone can aim. Big Harpe reaches his horse, mounts despite the bullet in his back, kicks the horse into motion. John Liper gives chase. The wild ride lasts maybe 3 miles through forest barely wide enough for a horse. Big Harpe tries to lose him sharp turns, jumping creeks, using terrain, but he's wounded and slowing. Liper fires again. This shot catches Big Harpe in the leg. The horse stumbles. Big Harpe slumps forward, losing his grip. Liper catches up, pulls Big Harpe from the saddle. They hit the ground together, hard impact that drives air from lungs. Liper raises a tomahawk, brings it down. The blow doesn't kill Big Harpe is still conscious, still moving, but it subdues him. Ends the chase. The rest of the posse arrives. 7 men in a circle around one wounded killer. Big Harpe lies in dirt, bleeding from back and leg, and wherever the tomahawk connected. The morning temperature is climbing towards 75. Cicadas starting their daytime screaming. Smell of blood and gunpowder and human sweat. Big Harpe asks for water. Someone pulls off a shoe. Big Harpe's own shoe. The irony noted in multiple sources walks to a nearby creek, fills it, brings it back, gives a dying man water because even here, even now, some frontier courtesies persist. Big Harpe drinks, then starts confessing. He admits to 20 murders, names some victims, describes methods. Talks for maybe 15 minutes while blood pools beneath him, and the posse listens in silence. 20 murders. He's lying. The actual number is closer to 40, maybe 50, but even lying, dying. He can't admit the full scope, can't face the complete total of what he's done. Or maybe he genuinely doesn't remember. When you kill that many people over 15 years, do individual victims blur together? Does murder become so routine that you lose count? Moses Stiegel steps forward. He's been silent for 3 days. Silent through the tracking and camping and chasing. Silent while Liper shot Big Harpe and pulled him from the horse. Silent while Big Harpe confessed to 20 murders. Now he speaks. You killed my wife, my 4-month-old son. You slit his throat while he slept. You burned my house to the ground. Big Harpe nods. Yes, he did that. 4 days ago. The Stegel murders are fresh, immediate, still clear in memory. Moses Stegel draws a knife. I'm going to cut off your head. He points a gun at Big Harpe's face. Big Harpe, still conscious, jerks his head side to side, instinctive, trying to dodge a bullet even while bleeding out from 2 other gunshot wounds. No, Stiegel says. I won't shoot you in the head. I want to save it as a trophy. He aims lower, at Big Harpe's heart. Fires. The bullet enters left side, probably punctures lung. Definitely ensures that Big Harpe is dying if he wasn't already. Then Moses Stiegel kneels down with his knife. Big Harpe is still conscious, still aware, watching through fading vision as Moses Stiegel begins cutting. The decapitation takes time. Stiegel isn't skilled at this, isn't a butcher or surgeon or anyone trained in anatomy. He's a farmer whose family was murdered 4 days ago, working with a knife designed for skinning deer, trying to sever a human head while the human watches. It's brutal, slow, deliberately so. Moses Stiegel isn't trying to be merciful, isn't trying to make death quick. He's making Big Harpe experience every second of dying, making him feel what his victims felt, making the end as terrible as the crimes that earned it. One source, possibly legend, possibly truth, claims Big Harpe's last words were, "You're a rough butcher, but cut on," defiant to the end, not begging, not apologizing beyond that single confession about his daughter, just acknowledging that yes, this is rough, this is brutal, this is exactly what I deserve. 7 a.m. Moses Stiegel holds Big Harpe's severed head by the hair. Blood drips onto August grass. The body lies in dirt, headless, still bleeding though the heart has stopped. The posse lets Stiegel keep the head. Doesn't question what he's going to do with it. Doesn't suggest a trial or legal process or any of the civilized mechanisms for dealing with murderers. Because this isn't civilization. This is frontier Kentucky in 1799, where law is a concept and justice is whatever you make it. Moses Stiegel walks to a crossroads a mile from where Big Harpe died, finds a pole or maybe cuts one from a tree, the sources disagree on specifics, mounts Big Harpe's head at eye level, public display, warning, trophy. The location becomes known as Harpe's Head. The name persists. 225 years later, you can still drive down Harpe's Head Road in Webster County, Kentucky. The exact spot where the head was mounted is lost. The pole rotted. The skull disappeared. The landscape changed, but the name remains. Because some violence echoes through centuries. Some crimes are so brutal that they scar the land itself, marking geography with blood that never quite washes away. Big Harpe is dead. Shot twice. Struck with a tomahawk. Shot again. Slowly decapitated while conscious. His head mounted on a pole as warning to other travelers. Is that justice or revenge? Or both justice for the victims? Revenge for Moses Stiegel? Both things true simultaneously. The question doesn't have a comfortable answer. Because Moses Stiegel killed a man slowly, deliberately, watching him die the way Big Harpe had watched others die. He became, in that moment, something like what he was hunting. Used violence to answer violence, became executioner and torturer both. But Big Harpe killed 39 people, killed them with ritual brutality, filling their bodies with stones, murdered infants for crying, perfected methods of death for 15 years, and law enforcement was 40 miles away, unable to help, unable to stop him. What's the alternative? Let him escape. Hope he's caught eventually. Trust in a legal system that barely exists and couldn't reach this far into wilderness anyway. 7 men stood in a circle that morning and watched Moses Stiegel cut off Big Harpe's head. None stopped him. None objected. None suggested mercy or trial or any alternative. Because they understood something fundamental about frontier justice. Sometimes the choice isn't between right and wrong. Sometimes it's between revenge and nothing. Between making them pay or letting them go. Between becoming a killer yourself or letting killers run free. The line between justice and vengeance disappears in Kentucky wilderness. And once it disappears, once you cross into that territory where you're judge and jury and executioner, can you come back? Can you return to being the person you were before you cut off a man's head while he watched Moses? Stiegel will have the rest of his life to answer that question. August 24th, 1799, 6:15 a.m. While John Liper chases Big Harpe west, Little Harpe runs east, through canebrake dense enough to hide him completely, through morning fog that makes tracking impossible, through terrain he knows from weeks of traveling through Kentucky. The posse doesn't pursue. 7 men aren't enough to split up 4 chasing one Harpe, 3 chasing the other. They'd be outnumbered, vulnerable, likely to lose both. So they focus on Big Harpe, the larger one, the one John Liper's already shot, the one they can actually catch. Little Harpe escapes, alone now, without his cousin, without the women who've traveled with them for years, without anything except the knowledge that he's wanted for murder in Kentucky and Tennessee, that a $300 bounty sits on his head, that his cousin just died screaming in the dirt. He runs north, back toward Illinois, back toward the only refuge that ever accepted him, Cave-in Rock, Samuel Mason's gang of river pirates, the same criminals who expelled the Harpes 5 months ago for excessive violence, who told them to leave because even outlaws have limits. Little Harpe shows up alone, explains that Big Harpe is dead, promises he'll behave, promises he won't do the things that got them expelled. No elaborate murders, no killing for pleasure, just professional criminal work, robbing flatboats, taking money, the normal outlaw life. And remarkably, Samuel Mason accepts him. Maybe because Little Harpe without Big Harpe is different, less violent, more controlled. As if whatever drove the murder spree was partnership, was the two of them together feeding off each other, amplifying impulses that alone they could suppress. Or maybe Samuel Mason simply needs another experienced fighter. River piracy is dangerous work. You need people who can shoot, fight, kill when necessary. Little Harpe qualifies. So Wiley Harpe joins Samuel Mason's gang under an alias, John Seton, or John Sutton. The sources disagree on spelling. New name, new identity, new life as a professional criminal instead of a serial killer. For 4 years, this works. 1799 through 1803. 4 years of robbing flatboats on the Ohio River, taking money and supplies from settlers heading west, sometimes killing people who resist, sometimes not. Professional criminals avoid unnecessary murder because corpses attract attention, and attention attracts military intervention. Little Harpe lives this life successfully. Nobody recognizes him. The alias holds. He becomes just another member of Samuel Mason's gang. Unremarkable, except for his skills with a rifle and his willingness to kill when the job requires it. Does he miss the elaborate murders? The ritual methods? The satisfaction of watching someone die slowly while performing his signature acts? The sources don't say, can't say. Little Harpe never speaks about those years, never explains what he felt or thought or wanted. We only know he stopped the signature murders, stopped killing for pleasure, lived 4 years as a professional criminal motivated by profit instead of compulsion, which raises uncomfortable questions. If he could stop, if he could control the impulses that drove 15 years of serial murder, why didn't he stop sooner? What was different? Was it Big Harpe who pushed the violence further? Was it partnership that made killing compulsive? Or was it simply that professional crime paid better and attracted less attention? That Little Harpe chose profit over pleasure because profit was safer? We'll never know. But the fact that he could stop, that he could live 4 years without elaborate murders, that proves the Harpes weren't possessed by uncontrollable impulses, weren't driven by brain damage or mental illness that forced them to kill. They chose, every time, every victim, every murder. They chose, and Little Harpe chose to stop, for 4 years, until 1804, when he makes one final choice that ends him. Early 1804. Samuel Mason is the most wanted criminal in the Mississippi Territory, bounty on his head worth a fortune. Every law enforcement agency from Kentucky to Louisiana wants him dead or captured. Little Harpe, still using the alias John Seton, looks at that bounty and sees opportunity. He plots with another gang member, Peter Alston. Simple plan: kill Samuel Mason, cut off his head, take it to authorities, collect the reward, split the money. It's the kind of plan that professional criminals make. Profit-motivated, calculated. The same logic that drives robbing flatboats or stealing horses or any other frontier crime where money is the goal. The irony is perfect. Little Harpe killed 50 people over 15 years and never stole money from them, never took their possessions, never had any motive beyond the pleasure of killing. And now, the one time he kills for profit, the one time he commits murder, for the same reason normal criminals do it, destroys him. The exact date and method vary in sources. Some say they ambushed Mason during a gang operation. Some say Mason was already wounded, shot during an escape from law enforcement, and they finished him. Some say Little Harpe killed him deliberately, execution style, while others suggest Mason died from previous wounds and they simply took credit. What's certain, Little Harpe and Peter Alston cut off Samuel Mason's head, put it in a bag, ride to Mississippi Territory authorities. "We've brought you Samuel Mason," Little Harpe says, presenting the head, claiming the reward. A man steps forward from the crowd, a Kentuckian, someone who'd seen the wanted posters back in 1799, someone who remembered the descriptions. "That's not John Seton," he says. "That's Wiley Harpe, Little Harpe. He's wanted for murder in Kentucky." The authorities arrest them both. Little Harpe's alias, which held for 4 years, collapses in seconds. His new identity, professional criminal instead of serial killer, dissolves. He's Wiley Harpe again. The man who killed at least 25 people personally, who assisted in another 25 murders, who gutted travelers and filled them with stones. The trial is brief. Frontier justice in 1804 Mississippi Territory doesn't involve extensive legal process. They're clearly guilty. They brought in a severed head, claiming it was Samuel Mason, which makes them murderers, regardless of whether Mason deserved killing. And Little Harpe is wanted for murders in Kentucky, which makes execution inevitable anyway. February 8th, 1804. They hang Little Harpe and Peter Alston together. Public execution. Crowd gathered to watch. Temperature in the 40s. Overcast. Typical February weather in Mississippi. After the hanging, they cut off Little Harpe's head. Same treatment Big Harpe received 5 years earlier. Same public display. They mount it on a pole along the Natchez Trace major road through Mississippi Territory. Heavily traveled. Perfect location for a warning. The head stays there until it rots. Months, maybe a year. A skull on a pole telling travelers this is what happens to murderers. This is frontier justice. This is the price of violence. Little Harpe dies the same way his cousin died. Decapitated. Head mounted as warning. But the contexts are opposite. Big Harpe died hunted. Caught by a posse. Killed by the father of his victims. His death was revenge dressed as justice. Personal and brutal and born from grief. Little Harpe dies betrayed by his own greed. Killed by authorities. Executed under legal process. However minimal that process was. His death is professional justice delivered by a system rather than by grieving fathers. Big Harpe killed 40 people and died never understanding profit as motive. Little Harpe killed 25 people and died trying to understand it. The one time he killed for money, the one time he acted like a normal criminal, the one time he did something that makes rational sense in the criminal economy, he gets caught. The universe offers no justice in this. No poetic balance, just irony. Just the random collision of choices and consequences that ends with a head rotting on a pole in Mississippi. Is there meaning in how he died? Does it matter that he died for money after killing for pleasure? Does the motive change anything? No. 25 people are still dead. Still killed and weighted with stones in rivers. Still murdered for no reason, except that Wiley Harpe enjoyed it. The fact that his final murder had a rational motive doesn't redeem the previous ones, doesn't make them less monstrous, doesn't resurrect anyone. Little Harpe is dead. Both Harpe brothers gone. The murder spree ended not by law enforcement, but by vigilante poses and betrayal by fellow criminals. Frontier justice delivering what courts and sheriffs couldn't. And the 3 women, Sarah Rice, Susan Wood, Maria Davidson, are left to process 15 years of trauma and decide whether to speak or stay silent.